So, welcome everybody. We're super excited. This is session 2 out of our 3-part series with our partners over at TargetGov. My name is Stephanie Chin, she, her pronouns. I'm the director of our Hutch incubator program at Fearless. And today's session is focusing around government agencies and how they are using artificial intelligence. Kiyon and I were just chatting about how AI is the future of everything. It's on the top of everybody's minds. Folks have tons of questions around it, how they can use it, how government can use it. So today we're going to focus around AI, but next week, same time, same place, we're going to be talking about how you entrepreneurs and contractors use AI as part of your tool belt and some of the things to be cautious about. So I will drop a link over in the chat to our Hutch Studios YouTube channel in case you have missed our first session or afterwards today, you want to go back and watch today's recording. You can find that all online. And as you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to go ahead and just drop them over in the chat and we'll make sure to get that answered as we go along. And then we'll also save some time at the end of the presentation as well in case you have any last burning questions that we want to make sure that Kiyon hits on. And for those of you who are not familiar with Hutch, we are an intensive 24-month incubator program focused on helping entrepreneurs who are looking to scale up in the government contracting space. So we help empower our companies with the tools, the mentorship, and the peer support that they need in order to have a lasting impact. So think of us kind of as a home base where companies can grow without getting lost amongst some of the bigger companies and competition in this industry. And with that being said, I will go ahead and pass it over to our friend and special guest, Kiyon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Do you want me to take over the slides? I can do that.
Yep, go for it.
Let me do that. So we have 1, 2, 3. Okay, I want screen 2. Thank you. Making sure I have done that before as well. Thank you so much for that introduction. And yes, my name is Kiyon Brandford. I'm a senior consultant with TargetGov. At TargetGov, we help companies win dollars, win contracts in the federal marketplace through our proprietary processes and services, our FAST process, our Kickstart program, along with other services, where we really hone in on the strategies and tactics necessary for your companies to grow and to really improve their business development strategies and the efficiency of your resources in the federal marketplace in particular. So last session, we were here last week. We talked specifically about intro to federal government contracting. And so some of the building blocks, some of the basics of what you need to know and what you need to understand if you intend on entering the federal marketplace and growing your company's revenues there. Today, we're going to talk about something that is equally essential and important if you are deciding on being a federal contractor and if you already are a federal contractor. These are essential things, essential tools that the federal government is using, strategies that they are using to find the companies that they want to do business with, right? And if the federal government can't find your company, right, they can't do research on you, then they can't do business with you. And so this is an essential part of specifically your marketing to federal decision makers. You want to make sure that when they go looking for example, a cybersecurity company, right? I'm sure we have some IT folks on the line. You want to be sure that when they go looking in the ways that they're going to look, and I'm going to talk about what those ways are today, that your company is associated with those core competencies, with those services, so that they can start reaching out to you and companies like you to do the market research that they need to do in order to do those federal procurements. So here's today's agenda. Please feel free to ask questions as we move throughout the sessions today. We're going to talk a little bit about just what the federal government is doing around AI, how they're keeping track of some of those things, and how all of you can get involved and how all of you should get involved in the different policies and in something called that the government's calling the AI Bill of Rights. It's important for you to get involved in these processes as well, because as Stephanie was mentioning before we hopped on the call, we were talking about how the federal government and the public at large generally, we have latched on to AI. It seems like this is going to be the next new big thing. It seems like that direction is pretty clear now. And I will tell you, just from all of the investments that the federal government has made in both AI processes, platforms, and research that they've done, they have also, pardon my phrase, they've drank the Kool-Aid. I said it earlier. when I was talking to Stephanie. They have drunk the AI Kool-Aid. AI is going to be the way, and they have several different reasons why they have decided to move in that direction in lots of different things, whether that be internal government processes, whether that be how they notify the public about certain things. That's one way that the federal government's using AI, and then down to how they do federal procurements, in particular, how they do market research, which will be important for all of you as you are continuing to grow in the federal marketplace and grow in the federal opportunities that you want to pursue. I'll talk about Acquisition Gateway, which is one of the places where some of these AI tools live. I'll talk about, and then we'll talk about what that means for the future and how that's going to influence what the federal government calls their acquisition strategies. And then we'll get into some very tactical recommendations for you so that, like I mentioned earlier, when the federal government does come looking for you, come looking for your services, you show up when these artificial intelligence and data scraping tools go looking for companies that have very specific core competencies that can provide very specific products or services. Okay. We'll get into those various databases where you can do that. I'm going to provide everyone with a what we call our TargetGov keyword resource document. Keywords are going to be a key to how you are found by federal decision makers and by these acquisition tools. And so I'll talk about how to keep track of those keywords, what keywords are going to be important, which keywords are less so important, and then how you can use those in your various databases. Last thing we'll cover kind of a case study. It's a little more than that, in my opinion, but it's a real world example of how the federal government is using artificial intelligence right now, today, to reach out to and find contractors to provide the services that they're looking for. It's called GSA MRAS, Market Research as a Service. So we'll take any questions as we move throughout. If you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free, as Stephanie said, to send those questions in. As long as they're pertinent to the topics that we're discussing, then we'll answer those questions live as we move through the presentation. So this first section here, and this first slide here, is about federal AI initiatives broadly. So as I mentioned, the federal government, they have drunk the AI Kool-Aid. The federal government actually has been using artificial intelligence and robotic process automation. Next week, we will get into the difference between things like generative AI and content automation or process automation. They're not necessarily the same thing. There's slight differences in how they are used and what information they take in and what information they distribute. But nevertheless, the federal government has been using artificial intelligence and even robotic process automation for a few years now, even in terms of using it for federal procurements. Back in 2021, when the new administration took office, one of the things that they wanted to focus on was how artificial intelligence was going to interact with, change, and hopefully improve how the federal government does business, how they complete their various tasks, and how they interact with the public. And so at the beginning of the administration, in the first year, there was an executive order that was released called the Executive Order on the Safe, Secure, and Trustworthy Development and Use of Artificial Intelligence. One of the things that executive order did was it established a new website for the federal government to track artificial intelligence. And so if you haven't been or you haven't heard of it yet, AI.gov is a new website that has been propped up by the federal government to keep track of and to take in information regarding how artificial intelligence is going to impact and change the lives of all Americans. So you can go to AI.gov, and there are various things that you can do that you can research when you get there. One of the things that you're going to want to take a look at and start looking into is what the administration calls the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. If you don't necessarily know how artificial intelligence works, I'll give you a quick breakdown, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the implications of that in our next session next week. So come back for that, and we'll dig into that a little bit more. So artificial intelligence takes in information, takes in data, and the machine learns, right? And in that learning, the machine is taking in information that could potentially be private information of people, of entities, It could be proprietary information for your company, for the services you provide, or for the products you provide. The machine is taking in that information and it's using that information to inform the decisions and inform the outputs that it provides once you ask it a question or once you set it out to do a task. The federal government is really interested in using that artificial intelligence to help improve their efficiency and their productivity in those tasks. But they also have to be cognizant of the privacy aspects of artificial intelligence, right? Because that system is taking in information and learning, one of the things that the AI Bill of Rights really focuses and hones in on is to make sure that we're protecting the privacy, we're protecting the private information of entities and of people as we're using these artificial intelligence tools to develop automations and develop various improvements in how we execute tasks. And so take a second there to read through that AI Bill of Rights, and then that next memo, the OMB memo, Advancing Governance, Innovation, and Risk Management for Agency Use of Artificial Intelligence, that's something that's currently open for government, or excuse me, open for public comment. And so the government will do this a lot of times when they're coming out with big policies that will change the landscape of how the federal government does certain things. They'll put out a memo, and then they'll make it open for public comment. And so they give the public the opportunity to read through the memo and then to provide recommendations or feedback on things that they see that they might want to improve or change about what the government's laying out in that policy. In particular, for you all, and what I think is going to be important for contractors in particular to get involved with is to make sure that you're involved in building and propping up some of these artificial intelligence tools so that your diverse input, your diverse experiences are built into that system that is learning about how to make decisions in regards to various individuals. It's important that there is a diversity of experiences, a diversity of inputs in that artificial intelligence tool, because the decisions and the choices that it's going to make are based off of the information that has been fed to it. And so the more information you can feed to that machine and the more information and background you can give on yourself and how you would interact with those various rules and regulations and policies, it will only improve how those artificial intelligence tools will work in the future. In addition to that, there are, if any IT professionals out there, there are places for recruitment of artificial intelligence personnel. So the federal government, in addition to the federal government using artificial intelligence throughout its processes, it is also looking for experienced artificial intelligence personnel who have the credentials and have the expertise to help the government develop and safeguard around some of these artificial intelligence tools as well, right? You need experts to be able to let you know what should go in the AI Bill of Rights to protect individuals from having their private information scraped through or guarded or stolen. In addition to this AI.gov and the AI Bill of Rights and all of these things that the federal government's doing to put safeguards around artificial intelligence to make sure that the people are protected even when the federal government's using these artificial intelligence and data scraping tools and robotic process automation, there are acquisition innovation labs across the federal government. And what these acquisition innovation labs do is they take into account what artificial intelligence and robotic process automation can do, and they develop new techniques and new strategies for the acquisition workforce to use in their procurement strategies as they are looking for businesses to work with. If you didn't know, a little fact about acquisition professionals in the federal marketplace is that over the last year, over 43% of acquisition professionals retired out or changed offices in the past year. Now, what that means for you as a contractor, the implications for that for you are that there are less people who are doing more spending across the federal marketplace. And you can imagine that makes people extremely busy, right? It makes it difficult for you to get in and have capability briefings or one-on-one meetings with those people, right? They spend a little bit less time at events in places where you can interact with them, and they spend more time in the office just because they have an increase in the amount of spending in the duties that they have as a contracting officer. And so one of the things that the acquisition innovation labs, both or the Department of Commerce's lab, the DHS's procurement innovation lab, the PIL, which I'm going to talk about in more detail in the next slide, EPA's cutting edge contracting innovation lab, Cecil, and then NASA also has their own innovation lab for procurement innovations. And those procurement innovations don't stay in just those agencies. What happens is those agencies, those innovation labs, they take on those responsibilities to develop those new acquisition strategies and tactics, and then they distribute them amongst federal decision makers so that even decision makers at the Department of Veterans Affairs can use some of the innovation, some of the artificial intelligence tools that they're developing to help acquisition professionals do their jobs. And so this is not just a lab by lab effort. Like I said, the federal government has drunk the Kool-Aid, and they are looking to import and to use acquisition innovations wherever they can across the federal government so that decision makers can push out the amount of dollars that they need to push out to get the government to achieve the missions and the goals that they've set out. One of those very specific services, this didn't come out of one of these innovation labs, it actually came out of the GSA, but nevertheless, it's a service that the federal government offers using robotic or using artificial intelligence is GSA's market research as a service. I have a whole slide on GSA and on GSA market research as a service, so I'm not going to get into that. But short version is that the GSA is using artificial intelligence to find contractors to send market research surveys for on behalf of agencies. So they've done something really cool where they tell the agencies, we'll do your mandatory market research, right? They have to do market research. We, GSA, will do your mandatory market research for free. You don't have to pay us a dime. And we'll get the report to you quickly. You just have to make sure you do some of those procurements on the GSA schedule. And so again, I'll get there in just a couple of slides where I'll talk about some considerations to take in determining whether or not you want to get a GSA schedule. And then if you do get a GSA schedule, how to make sure you're following up on these market research as a service surveys, and how to make sure your company are getting the market research as a service surveys sent to you by the artificial intelligence and data scraping tools. You may be wondering, who is this handsome young gentleman that is on my screen right now? I will tell you that he is one of the originators of introducing artificial intelligence into specifically the acquisition process. And so this is Scott Simpson. He is the head, or he was the head of the Procurement Innovation Lab over at the Department of Homeland Security. And one of the things that they wanted to do was they wanted to give their decision makers a tool that they could use to do market research when they were looking for very specific products or very specific services. And so what they did was they started developing an acquisition tool using contractors, right? And so for anyone out there who are IT contractors who are working in the artificial intelligence space or working in the robotic process automation space, you guys are a hot commodity right now, right? So not only is the federal government using artificial intelligence, they're looking for companies to come in and help them craft their artificial intelligence strategies and their tools so that their decision makers can use them. So you kind of get a 2-for-1 here. And so that's essentially what Scott Simpson had done. He went out and they were already working with some contractors who specialized in AI. And so it just kind of was a natural fit, a natural slide over to bring those companies on as early AI developers for the department. And what they ended up coming up with was a tool, it's a set of tools that decision makers can use to, in particular, search through CPARS records. So for those of you who haven't won contracts above $250,000, CPARS is the Contractor Performance Assessment Rating System. That's what the acronym stands for. That's where the government essentially gives you a report card for the services or for the products that you provided to them. So the tools that Scott Simpson and his team developed, they created artificial intelligence tools and robotic process automation tools where a decision maker can go into CPARS and they can say, show me contractors who provide risk management framework services who have at least 3 CPARS ratings, and those ratings fall into either very good or exceptional ratings. Prior to that, you'd have to go through one by one and open up each of those CPARS records to see how that contractor did and to see exactly what services they provided. And so what their tools did was they cut all of that searching time out. And so instead of having to search for all of those various CPARS reports to find those companies who have very good ratings in risk management framework, Now they can just put that search into one of these artificial intelligence tools and they get an entire report of all of the companies that match the criteria that they've put into this artificial intelligence tool so that they can begin their market research from there. The last time, for those of you who might not have been on the call last week, we talked about early marketing that you can do to federal decision makers to influence the acquisition, right? So before the RFP comes out, how can you get in front of the decision makers and how can you influence the requirements of that opportunity so that you are in the best position to win those opportunities? It starts here. This is where their market research efforts start. They start with these artificial intelligence tools, these robotic process automations, so that they can get a good feel and understanding for the landscape at large for the contractors who can provide the services or provide the products that they're looking for. One of the issues that they're currently running into, right, is that they haven't fully informed contractors that this is the way that they are doing market research now. It's starting to become a little bit better known across the marketplace. And so contractors are starting to put the keywords and phrases in the right places for the artificial intelligence and data scraping tools to find them. But they've been struggling with finding companies who can provide them with the products and services that they're looking for. As I mentioned earlier, if they can't find you, they can't do business with you. And for small businesses in particular, what that typically means is if they can't find any small businesses to provide those products and services, they just move over and they provide and they give that opportunity over to a large business who they know already have the capabilities to provide those products and provide those services. And we don't want that. We want small businesses to go and win those dollars. And so you want to make sure that when these artificial intelligence tools come looking for you, your company can be found so that decision makers can continue to award those dollars to small businesses. Another one of the places where you can go in particular, and I would recommend anyone who's especially working in like federal business development to go here and to start taking a look at some of these strategies that the federal government is using in their acquisition innovation. So this website that you see here on this slide is called Acquisition Gateway. Okay, this is one of the hubs that host a lot of these artificial intelligence and data scraping tools. Us as contractors, we cannot go into Acquisition Gateway and use those acquisition artificial intelligence tools. Those are for contractors to use. You have to have a special federal government login to use them. But what you can do is you can go to the periodic table of acquisition innovation. And what this is these are case studies and various tools that have been developed across the federal government that can be and that are being used in acquisition strategies. There in the middle of the screen, or kind of 3/4 of the way down the screen, I have a couple red boxes down there. And what that essentially says is that this isn't going to be a one-time thing. Right now, we have several tools that the federal government can use that rely on artificial intelligence and machine learning and robotic process automation. But in addition to that, those tools and the use of those tools are going to be used to develop new tools in the future. So this is not going away. And becoming familiar with the tools now that they're using now will only help you as they develop new tools to use in the future. So spend some time here. There are various phases of the acquisition where they are using various innovations. And so they have tools for market research. They have tools for defining requirements. They have tools and strategies for solicitations. They have tools and strategies for evaluating RFPs, right? That's something that as a contractor, you really want to be intimately familiar with. You don't want to be submitting a proposal and not necessarily know what criteria or what tools they're using to evaluate your proposal. Understanding how they're going to evaluate you will inform how you put together that proposal in the first place. And so spend some time here getting to know exactly how the government is looking for you and exactly how they are evaluating you so that you can tailor your federal agency registrations, you can tailor your capability statements, you can tailor your marketing materials, you can tailor your RFP responses and your sources sought notice responses so that these artificial intelligence tools pick you up in those various search results. So now let's talk about how you can take advantage of those artificial intelligence tools and make sure that you are found when the decision makers come looking. And we're going to talk about doing it with things that if you're registered in sam.gov and you're a small business, you already have these registrations. And these are two of the main places that these artificial intelligence and data scraping tools go to find the keywords and phrases that they are looking for. So the first that I'm going to talk about is sam.gov. So I mentioned it last week when we had a conversation. Sam.gov is, if you want to be a federal contractor, you have to be registered in sam.gov, right? It's one of those mandatory things that you need to do. But it's not the only thing that sam.gov is used for. Okay? So in addition to being a required registration for your company, it is also a marketing tool for your company as well. So before we get to the keywords and phrases, I want to talk a little bit about a few of the things in your SAM profile that you can do to make sure that the artificial intelligence tools that are coming to look for companies who can provide similar products and services to you can still find you when they come looking. First things first, make sure you have your company's URL in your SAM profile. You won't believe how many times I've gone to a company's SAM profile and they don't have their URL there. On top of that, when you put your URL in your SAM profile, you want to make sure that it can get through the federal government's firewalls. Okay, the artificial intelligence tools run behind those firewalls, and if your website is blacklisted, then they won't be able to access it. So you need to have the HTTPS, you need to have the S in front of your website URL when you put it into SAM. That way, when these tools start scraping and they put together these reports for decision makers to use, when they click on your website and decide to access it, they can get to the material and the information that they are looking for. You will have NAICS codes in your SAM profile as well. Okay. Some of these tools are based on, and they use NAICS codes to filter down to the contractors who they're interested in looking for. Now, NAICS codes are a bit of a balance, right? Because you don't want to get left behind by these artificial intelligence tools because you're missing one particular NAICS code in your profile. But you also don't want to look like you do everything under the sun, because that's a bit of a turnoff for federal decision makers. If you tell me you do everything, then to me that means that you do nothing very specific, or you might not have anything that you do the best. I'll put it that way. And the decision makers want your best. They don't want things that you can do. They want things that you have done and where you can show that you've delivered results to your customers in the past. Okay. So when you're thinking about the amount of NAICS codes you have for IT, I typically recommend somewhere between 6 and 12. For construction, you guys lean closer to construction and facilities. You lean closer to 15, just because there are more NAICS codes out there for construction services. And then everyone else, I'd say you want to be under 10. Now I'm going to talk about where to find the right keywords and phrases in just a few slides. But I'll give you a hint in finding the keywords and phrases by talking about how you find the right NAICS codes to put into your SAM profile. So obviously you'll have your primary NAICS code, right? The one that describes your services most closely, right? That'll be your primary NAICS code. And then you'll want to go out and look for opportunities, sources sought notices, RFIs, solicitations that your target customer has put out on sam.gov, on their agency forecasts, and look for opportunities where the scope fits your company's core competencies. If the scope fits your core competencies, the services or the products that you want to provide, look at the NAICS code that they've used to describe that work. If you see that NAICS code multiple times for your target on the opportunities that you're interested in, that's a NAICS code that you probably want to add to your profile. And so you don't want to use your own intuition necessarily to determine what codes you're going to be using. You want the federal government to tell you, because they do. They tell you exactly what products and services they're looking for. It's just up to us to do the research to figure out and to find those opportunities and then scrape those opportunities the same way that artificial intelligence tools do, to put the codes and put the keywords and phrases in the places where the artificial intelligence tools are coming to look. So we're kind of reverse engineering this a little bit. They're going to be looking for keywords and phrases. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go look for keywords and phrases and put them in the places where those artificial intelligence tools are going to be looking for them. So that brings us to, well, let me pause. We'll go back. One more coding system that I want you all to be aware of. PSC codes, product or service codes. Those are codes that are a bit more specific that the federal government can use. I would recommend going in and looking at PSC codes. There's not really a limit to the number of those you want to include. Those will also be on opportunities. And so save those as you see them and add those to your SAM profile as well. Okay, now keywords. In sam.gov, it is not the most intuitive place for you to put those keywords and phrases. In sam.gov, in your points of contact, there is a field called notes. If you look at your points of contact today and you don't see a notes field, that's because you don't have any keywords and phrases in it. Now you can see here, this is TargetGov President and CEO Gloria Larkin. This is our TargetGov's SAM profile, or a snip of our SAM profile. This is our government business point of contact. And you can see in the notes field, now that there are keywords and phrases there, you can see speaker, expert, leader, marketing, RFI, RFP, RFQ. Now, you guys wouldn't have these same keywords and phrases, right? These are keywords and phrases that describe the services that TargetGov does. So your keywords and phrases will describe the services that you do, but you have space in each of your points of contact to put keywords and phrases that the government is going to come looking for, or that the artificial intelligence tools are going to come looking for when they're looking for contractors to provide the products and services that they need. In each of these points of, so you have 3 main points of contact, and then you have 3 alternates. In each of these points of contact boxes, or excuse me, in each of these notes fields in your points of contact, you can fit about 100 keywords and phrases. That means across the 3 fields and the alternate points of contact, you have space for about 600 keywords and phrases to go into your SAM profile. You will probably have at least that many, if not more. Okay, I'll talk about where to get those in just a couple slides. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging there, but you don't need to repeat keywords and phrases in each of the points of contact. Okay, if the keyword makes more sense as a keyword phrase, the phrase together, I would put the keyword phrase into SAM, into the notes field. For acronyms, you know, we speak acronym salad in the federal marketplace. So for acronyms, right, I mentioned risk management framework earlier. If you do risk management framework, you need to put risk management framework in as a keyword. You also need to put RMF, the acronym for risk management framework. Artificial intelligence may be smart, but it's not that smart. Okay, it can't distinguish that risk management framework is the RMF is the acronym for risk management framework. And so you need to have both keywords, the keyword and the acronym in your notes field. For words that can be spelled multiple ways, put both. The first example that comes to mind is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, some folks will spell cybersecurity all one word. Other folks will spell cybersecurity, cyberspace security. The artificial intelligence tools may not pick up on that. And so depending on who your target is, right, you need to have both cybersecurity, the full word, and cyberspace security in these keyword fields. Keyword, comma, keyword, comma, keyword, comma, comma, space. That's how I would put it. If you're going to keep this in our keyword research document, which is what I recommend, you want to take those keywords, you want to copy them into, or copy and paste them into something like a notepad or something like that, something that strips formatting out so that you're not wasting characters on capitalization or bolds or whatever other nonsense Microsoft Word may be putting into your keywords and phrases. But that is where these data scraping tools will go to find your company when decision makers come looking for them. If you want to do a little search and you want to test to see whether or not your company will show up, take one of your keywords and phrases, go into sam.gov, and go to entity information, right? Go to the entity tab. In that box, in that search box for the entity tab, I don't want you to put a company name. I don't want you to put a UEI. Instead, I want you to put a keyword that the federal government would use to find or to find companies who provide the services that you want to. If you do that search and your company doesn't show up, you don't have the right keywords and phrases in your profiles. If you do show up, you will see that there's not that many companies out there who know to do this. And so you will have a distinct advantage over the companies who don't know to put those keywords and phrases in their SAM profile. You will begin to receive inquiries in your email directly from decision makers asking you to bid or respond to specific opportunities because they were able to find you. There are more. Now, this slide actually didn't come from TargetGov. This came from DISA, Defense Information Systems. Remember what the A is for now. Yeah, Defense Information Systems, and then the A stands for something. But this was a part of their industry day where they were informing contractors exactly how we go looking for small businesses when we're doing our market research. And so in addition to your SAM profile, you will have the dynamic small business search profile as well. You get there, there's a new way to get to that dynamic small business search profile. It is connect.sba.gov. And so if you haven't been to your DSBS profile in a little while, this is only for small businesses, by the way, then you need to go to connect.sba.gov to log in. And in the same way that you can put keywords and phrases into sam.gov, you can also put keywords and phrases into the dynamic small business search as well. There are 3 places for you to put keywords and phrases in the dynamic small business search. The capabilities narrative field. Okay, it says to write a narrative, don't do a narrative. Human eyes are not going to go through and read each of those. Those keywords and phrases in that capabilities narrative field are there for data scraping tools and artificial intelligence tools to come through and find. And so you don't need sentence structure, keyword, comma, just like you did in your SAM profile. Special equipment and materials is the next field to put keywords and phrases. And then last but not least, the actual keywords field. Okay, so you have additional space in these areas in your dynamic small business search profile to include keywords and phrases as well. I mentioned this last week, but I'm going to say it again. For the dynamic small business search profile, in particular, there's also a place to include past performance in the dynamic small business search profile. If you are a company who doesn't have any past performance in your dynamic small business search profiles, you will turn decision makers away. Because to them, what that means is that you haven't performed before. You haven't provided any services. You haven't been paid for the work that you have done yet. And the federal government doesn't want to be your first customer. They don't want to be your first customer. They want to know that someone has paid you for those services before. And so make sure, in addition to putting the keywords and phrases in your dynamic small business search profile, you also include your past performance history there as well. It doesn't have to be federal past performance. As long as your company was paid for those services, you can put that information there under the performance history examples, and there's no limit to the number of performance history examples you can put. Agencies also have other databases of contractors to pull from. I call these the databases of favorite children, because the companies who are the agency's favorite children, those ones that you see win over and over and over and over again, you're like, how'd that company win that opportunity again? They just won one. Because they're a favorite child at the agency. One of the first things you need to do to take the steps towards becoming one of those favorite children is making sure that you're registered in other agency-specific registrations as well. One of the most popular agency registrations out there is Health and Human Services, SBCX, Small Business Customer Experience. Other agencies also have their own registration portals as well. The Department of Treasury, they have their own registration portal. And so if you are looking to do business with the Department of Treasury, you want to make sure that your company is registered in that agency registration portal. And when you fill out that agency registration portal, you can imagine you want to do the same thing that you've done for your SAM profile and for your dynamic small business search profile. You want to make sure that the keywords and phrases that that agency uses, and I'm going to get to this in just a slide, that specific agency uses to describe your products and services, you want to make sure that those keywords and phrases are in the capability statement you submit to them and in the agency specific registration profile that you have for that agency. For folks who are interested in cleared work, so secret, top secret work, the NSA has what's called the Acquisition Resource Center. I don't want to call it the NSA SAM, but it's kind of what it is. It is the NSA's version of an acquisition portal for them to put out opportunities to interact with and engage with contractors. There is you don't have to be cleared to register in NSA's ARC. You can be not cleared and register in NSA's ARC. And in there is a place for you to put keywords and phrases as well, for 500 keywords and phrases to put into that NSA ARC profile. So I've been talking a whole lot about keywords and phrases, but I haven't necessarily talked about what good keywords and phrases are. I've kind of mentioned it a little bit, but now we're going to talk exactly about what it is. For those of you who do program management, that is a sucky keyword, because you could program manage the building of a ship. You could manage the program for overhauling a software. You could manage the program for administrative support. There are several different ways for you to manage programs. And so program management is not a good keyword phrase. Okay. The best keywords and phrases are those that are the most specific. You get those keywords and phrases by looking at the notices that the federal government puts out. So sources sought notices, RFIs, requests for information, solicitations, performance work statements, PWS, statements of work, SOWs. Okay. You go in there, and this is literally what I do. When I find an opportunity that matches the scope that a client wants to provide, or it matches their core competencies and their services, I download the statement of work where I go to the sources sought notice, and I take a highlighter and I highlight the keywords and phrases that match the scope or match the core competencies of the client that I'm working with. So if you're a cybersecurity company, go through and highlight all of the keywords and phrases that the government used to describe exactly what they want you to deliver for that opportunity. Those, and you want to, when you're organizing it, I'll show you this when we get to the keyword research document. You want to organize it by agency. So last week, again, if you weren't here, go back and watch that session. But each one of those agencies is responsible for their own spending. And what that means is each one of those agencies might call your services something a little bit different. Tell you a little story about a client that we had. They were doing business with the agency and they were doing great. They were doing several millions of dollars in fencing, like fences, big, huge fences. And they were doing great. They were doing fine. And then 1 year came around and they stopped winning opportunities. They stopped seeing opportunities, which was the weirdest thing. So not only weren't they winning, but they couldn't even find the opportunities that they were used to seeing and used to responding to. That's because the federal government had moved away from buying fencing and they moved towards buying secure perimeter systems. Now, secure perimeter systems is just another way to say fencing. But without knowing that the federal government made that shift in the keywords and phrases that they used, it really put a damper on the opportunities that they saw and the opportunities that they could work on. And so the keywords that you're using, the ones that you're putting into your SAM profile, your dynamic small business search profile, that's a living document. Those are living keywords that you will constantly be updating and changing as you're screening through opportunities and you're looking for the scope and the requirements that you can provide services and provide products to for the federal government. And so go through those government notices, go through past notices that you've seen that maybe you didn't bid on, but still were a good fit for your company. Highlight those keywords and phrases, save them in a keyword research document, and then go put them in the places that I just recommended. There's a couple other places that I'll get to in just the next slide. Don't use Google keywords. Google keywords have no affiliation with federal decision makers and with how federal decision makers do searches for particular products and services. And so you don't want to rely on Google keywords. Don't rely on your own list of keywords. If you got a list of keywords that you developed yourself in-house, you might get close, but really what you want to do is you want to cross-match and compare those keywords and phrases that you have with the keywords and phrases that the government uses to describe your products and services. as I mentioned, everyone's going to get, as long as you, yeah, I think Stephanie, you guys are going to send an email out with this, right? Yeah, Stephanie's team's going to send an email out with this resource. So I mentioned earlier, you're going to want to keep track of the NAICS codes as well for those opportunities. And so there's a column there for you to put the NAICS codes for that particular agency. You want to organize these by agency because each of the agencies will have their own sets of keywords that they use to describe your services. And then right there in that keywords column, you just want to copy and paste those keywords and phrases that you highlighted, copy and paste them directly into this keyword resource document. Then once you do that, you'll go to those places where it says where to be used. You'll go to the registration portals. In your capability statements, I'll give you a little hint about how to tailor and customize your capability statements. In your capability statements, the core competencies section where you describe the services you want to provide, it should look very familiar to the decision makers who wrote those requirements for that opportunity, because it should use a lot of the same keywords and phrases that they used to describe what they were looking for. And when I say it should look a lot like, I literally mean verbatim. If the government asks you for design, build, construction services in your core competencies, you want to say that you can provide them with design, build, construction services. Use their exact keywords and phrases. Use them on your website. So on your website, in places where you describe your services, keyword heavy bullet points is what I often recommend. So use those bullet points in those places as well, just in case you do get a contracting officer or a decision maker who's using Google, because some of them do. They're not supposed to, but some of them do. And in case they do, you want to make sure that your website has those keywords and phrases in them as well. And then in your social media tagging, I often get questions about what to do in particular for federal contracting social media. Go follow the agencies who you're interested in doing business with. Make sure you follow their OSDBU pages, Offices of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. Follow their OSDBU directors, and go like and comment on their posts. In those likes and in those comments in particular, you want to use some of the same keywords and phrases that you know that agency is using to buy products and services that you're interested in providing. Okay, so this is a full effort around all of your marketing to use the language that the federal government is using to describe what you do. That in turn will make sure that the artificial intelligence tools find you when the time is right to reach out, or for the government to reach out to you to provide products and services. GSA schedules. So GSA, just a couple years ago now, they came out with a new service called GSA MRAS, Market Research as a Service. I mentioned a little bit about what it does and what it is earlier, but I'll go through it again. So, one, GSA schedules can be for both services and for products. They're 5-year contracts. They're renewable. They're 5-year contracts up to 20 years. And so this is a long-term contract vehicle that you can use, that the federal government can use to purchase products and services of many, many different kinds. What the GSA has done, and it's frankly genius, is that agencies have to do market research. They have to go get a feel for the landscape, get a feel for the contractors that are out there who can provide them with the products and services they want to buy. The GSA has said, okay, we know that market research can be a heavy lift for the agency decision makers, and we want to take some of that burden off of them. We will do your market research for you, and we'll get you the report in a short turnaround. The way that they find so what they do, and then if the agency agrees, the GSA goes out and they start doing their own market research. One of the things that they do is they only send those market research surveys out to companies who have GSA schedules. And even further than that, they only reach out to companies who have GSA schedules who match the criteria of the artificial intelligence tools that they use to find those companies. Those artificial intelligence tools scrape things like your SAM profile, like your dynamic small business search profile, capability statements that you may have submitted to federal agencies, in addition to your GSA price list, right? Because all these companies will have GSA schedules. If you get a GSA schedule, you have to submit a price list. These artificial intelligence tools skim through your price lists as well to see if you provide the type of person, provide the labor, provide the skills, provide the services that agency has requested. Any agency can make this request. So it doesn't have to be from the GSA. It can be from Army. It can be from USDA. It can be from HHS. Any agency can make this request of GSA to do this market research as a service survey. And the surveys are really, really easy to fill out. They're typically multiple choice, fill in the blank, short answer type questions so that the GSA can compile those results and get them to the contractors as quickly as possible. Without having a GSA schedule and without having the right keywords and phrases in your SAM profile, your SBA profile, and the other places that those data scraping tools are looking for, you will never see these opportunities. You will never get the opportunity to bid on these opportunities. In order to do that, you have to know and understand how those tools are used. You have to know and understand what those tools are looking for and where they are looking for them. That is the purpose of you doing that research, to know exactly what those acquisition strategies look like coming out of the federal marketplace. That way you can tailor your SAM profile, tailor your capability statements, tailor your website for those acquisition tools to find you. That way you get included in the companies who are going to compete for that work. Okay, if you scan this QR code here, you'll get all of these things here. You'll get a fact sheet about that executive order that I talked about earlier, in addition to our TargetGov keyword research document, and along with these session slides. That is our fast processing kickstart program. And that is me and Stephanie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kiyon. So we do have a couple minutes left. If anybody has burning questions that they want to make sure get answered, of course, you can always reach out directly to either one of us if you do think of any questions afterwards that we didn't have time to get to. But really appreciate everybody's time today. We do have the third session of our series next Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And so make sure to join that. We'll be covering contractors' use of AI. And then all the recordings from our webinars are also posted on our YouTube page, which is over in the Zoom chat. And then would also like to shout out another webinar that we're going to be doing from Hutch on Tuesday. And that is all around helping entrepreneurs get the most out of any conferences or events that you might be attending. And so that is another free webinar that is coming up, especially as we head into conference season and all the BD opportunities that you might be looking to network with folks around.
So important. Can I
see,
plug that for a second?
yes.
So important. Going to government events is one of the few ways you can actively make sure you get in front of federal decision makers, and that is the key to the game. And so absolutely, please, I want to plug that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kiyon. So I see Crystal does have her hand up. So Crystal, sure. What is your burning question?
I don't know if it's burning, but thank you, Stephanie. Kiyon, this was great. Thank you so very much. But I wanted to kind of bounce back to the keywords that you all were talking about. So we are a startup that helps creative freelancers understand business behind the freelance world. And part of it also coming into the government contracting world. So we would be helping like videographers, photographers, web and graphic designers. So are those specific enough keywords for the GSA and all to put in there for the keywords that for them to look for us?
The ones you just said, I would say yes. Videographers, photographers, what else would be? Audiovisual is one. Audiovisual is one of those weird ones. Audiovisual, A/V, AV are all stand for audiovisual. That'd be one that I think would be of interest to you, because that's typically how the federal government talks about just generally photography, videography, those kinds of freelance services. And so, yes, I would say the ones that you just described are good keywords and phrases. Ones that I wouldn't put in would be something like scenery. That's not a good keyword phrase.
Okay. Got it. Thank you so much. This was really
Absolutely
good. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for the time today. Feel free to reach out directly to Kiyon or myself with any questions, but you will also be receiving all of the materials from today and the recordings as follow-up. So appreciate everybody's time and looking forward to seeing you next week on Zoom.